Rep the South Side whenever you pay with your White Sox debit card from Wintrust Community Banks and score perks like free ATMs, no monthly fees, and a $300 opening bonus. Pay with pride every time with Wintrust, Chicago's bank.
Hey everybody, it's Chuck Garfien. Welcome to the White Sox Podcast, brought to you by our great friends at Wintrust, Chicago's bank. Show your team pride with a White Sox debit card. Get yours at wintrust.com/Sox. Member 𝗵𝗍 EHL lender. Okay, it's April. It is early April. This early in the season, everything in baseball gets magnified, sometimes over-magnified, as we try to figure out what is it that we're actually seeing in baseball, and especially with the White Sox. After getting their you-know-whats kicked in last year, 121 losses. The way things have started this year, especially after getting swept by the Tigers, it's not exactly encouraging out of the gate. So what's going on? Connor McKnight and I have watched every inning, every pitch so far this season. And we're going to share with you what we have liked so far and what we have not liked, plus the biggest overreactions to the White Sox rough start. What or who is flying under the radar with the White Sox so far this season, and more. Early season hot takes about the White Sox cold start. Let's go. All right, Connor McKnight is with me. He just finished a 3-game series in Detroit where he sideline reported for CHSN. You are now in Cleveland, balmy, tropical Cleveland. Tell me about the weather, because the White Sox have the home opener for the Guardians on Tuesday, and the weather looks iffy.
Yeah, not great. The window behind me, it's cold, and I don't want to. No, I'm not going to open it. It's cold and gray, and you can see the smoke and it's like everything. It's you have the tailpipe when you drive, it has all the exhaust and the smoke in the air that's coming off all the buildings and the lake and the whole deal. It's not good. It's very cold.
This sounds like Bears Browns weather, not
It does.
White Sox Guardians weather.
Yeah, it does. And I think these games could be played to, something like 9-7 as well. And hopefully that's a good thing for the White Sox and the bullpen, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, in just a little bit.
We will. Pressing question, did you bring a parka with you? Because you're going to be outside for a long time.
I did not bring a parka, but I have procured. So I wasn't sure what the rules were on the CHSN gear on camera. So I have every piece of CHSN clothing that I was issued by Joe Collins. Thanks, man. And then I bought just now before the podcast some underlayer thermal stuff that I'm really hoping does the job. I stole any number of hand warmers and back warmers and feet warmers from Brooke Fletcher.
Yep.
Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate you. And I'll be using all of those, I think, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
I do have a scarf.
No. Should I get a scarf?
Yes.
Okay.
You need a scarf, man.
Scarf.
Come on. This is inside Midwest cold weather city knowledge that I would think you'd have by now. That was going to warm you up 10 degrees.
I'm the Midwest guy who just goes hoodie and I layer the hoodie and the lightweight jacket. I don't go outside in the winter. It's part of the reason that I work in baseball, so I don't have to go outside in the winter. I walk the dog for 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. And then I pick up my daughter from daycare. That's all I do in the winter. That's the only thing. So this is all, I am underprepared.
I highly recommend a scarf.
All right. I will
Because
procure.
all that cold just going to go into your bones. You're going to be freezing.
I will find a scarf. I will find it just for you. I will find
just
a
for
scarf.
me. Sponsored by Chuck Garfien.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we have a lot to talk about, a lot to get to, and I've kind of broke this down into certain parts. Let's begin with what we've liked so far from the White Sox and what we have not liked so far from the White Sox. The optimist in me wants to start with what we've liked, but everyone listening and watching are not liking a lot of things. So we got to cut to the chase and what we don't like so far. And I mean, they just got swept by the Tigers. It was ugly, especially the last game, which should have been a win. So let's start with the bullpen. They had a 3-1 lead in the 7th. And they needed 5 relievers to get 7 outs. They made 5 outs, gave up 3 runs, and they lost in a heartbreaker. So why don't you kind of take it from here, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Yeah, obviously the walks are an issue. 𝗭𝟐 talked after the game and said something that I thought was interesting, and kind of piggybacked off something that Martin Perez had said. Trust your stuff, right? You got to go after these guys with your best. And I think for the most part in that game, White Sox relievers did do that. They got wild with some of their best stuff. I talked to Jordan 𝗠🀗 a couple of days ago about, kind of being in a bullpen that is pocket oriented as opposed to innings oriented, right? I think the days of having your 7, 8, 9 guys, your Royals 2015, bullpen, or your Tony La Russa bullpens of the Cardinals, back in the whatevers, I think we're kind of out of those days almost completely. But we're not out of the day of having like that shutdown closer in the back end, whether it's Kenley Jansen of either recent or current vintage or whatever. But the White Sox don't have those guys, and they have committed themselves to throwing Mike Clevinger and Cam Boozer against, some of the most high leverage situations and biggest bats, which leaves some inexperienced arms and a guy like Penn Murphy to kind of find it in those later innings. And they did not. They absolutely didn't. Ellard's an interesting guy, and so is Boozer, in that they have different kind of repertoires against lefties and righties, and both of those guys might be better off, being platoon neutral sort of dudes. But that trust has to get there first. And Will Venable's been really open about, I need to find out who I trust first. And I think these growing pains were expected in a very serious way by the White Sox front office and the coaching staff, and maybe even by some guys in the bullpen for that matter. But they have been as painful and as growing as you could ask for, unfortunately, in the early part of the season. It'll be interesting. I think on tomorrow, Tuesday, I think one of the questions we'll ask is, with Mike Clevinger there, he walks the last 2 guys he faces. If he gets through that inning, is he going back out for a second inning of work? Is that kind of the process there? Would that have been on the table? And I think the answer probably was yes. Because then you've got Boozer, and then you've got your Murphys and your 𝗠🀗s to clean things up, hopefully with 1 away and nobody on kind of thing later in that game. This is where you knew the most difficult part of this White Sox, 26-man roster was gonna lay here in the early part of the season. I mean, say what you will about the offense, but I think it was pretty clearly the issues were going to be in that back end of the bullpen, and there have been issues, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the first 2 wins for the White Sox, they were blowouts. This was the first game where they had to protect a small lead late in the game. In the 7th inning, that was a situation where Martin Perez was at 82 pitches. The previous 2 starters, Cannon and Martin, only went 5. So, okay, we got that going on. And in that 7th inning, he goes to the bullpen, goes to Clevinger, 2 walks. He brings in Boozer to face Riley Green off the bench. Venable wins that chess match against A.J. Hinch and the Tigers. And we're watching this going, hey, that's great. And then another brain cell popped in my head and said, what's going to happen in the 9th? Because
who's left?
In my mind, it's Clevinger and Boozer are, in my opinion, Mr. Sportscaster, right now, they seem to be your best options for late game, 9th inning, protect leads. We then get to the 9th, and it's Frazier Ellard and Jordan 𝗠🀗. And as much as they want to go by, committee or go by matchups, pitching the 9th is much different than pitching the 8th and the 7th. And you just watched, and again, I'm only going off of 1 game this year, but you watched Ellard and 𝗠🀗 throw in those high leverage situations, and they looked very timid, not, here's my freaking pitch, you try to hit it. It was like, it was not 9th inning closer stuff, and I think they need to reevaluate whether they can handle that or not.
I think it'll be interesting to watch how they use them going forward. I think you're going to see more of the same for a little bit here. I really do. And I think you do have to kind of, like, Zach McKinstry worked a really good at bat late in that ball game.
Correct.
And Andy Ibanez's at bat wasn't quite as gritty as McKinstry's, because 𝗠🀗 kind of let him off the hook with a couple of bounced pitches. I think the first pitch and the last pitch were, completely uncompetitive, and he knows that. But all that to say, those are guys that hung in there pretty well. But I kind of go this way with bullpens that are leveraged like this. And I like the pocket attack bullpen. I am, kind of on board with this idea as a philosophy. If you've got Clevenger and Booser saved for the back end opportunities, kind of in that 8th and 9th, however you'd like to slice it, well, then who gets you to the 8th and 9th? Is that Frazier and Leisure again? Is that Murphy? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
These issues pop up regardless of where they are, right? And the worst part is, in my opinion, the worst part is when it's walks, these are deemed more errors by the pitcher, right? These are mistakes that your guy with the ball in his hand made, not guys earning their way on necessarily with, going the other way, a good approach or what have you, even though we just talked about the good at bat that 𝗏 McKinstry put together, you can still earn your way on with a walk. All that to say, you have these issues in the pen and they will come up regardless of whenever it is with those same guys popping up. This is a very difficult thing for them to have to manage in this way, but they have, ascribed this philosophy. They saw the stuff start to dip a little bit. Venables talked about that after the game from Martin Perez. Could he have gotten you 2 more outs? He said so, yeah. But this is the way they're going to go about it. And I think, maybe more thinking long-term, I think this coaching staff is testing the philosophies that they will use for the long-term as opposed to necessarily trying to get them through in an immediate sense, I suppose, if that makes any sense.
Quote from Frazier Ellard after the game. He said, this is a quote, "When our bullpen is in the zone, it's going to be hard to beat us. We were prepared. We did a good job of executing a lot of stuff today. It really comes down to I walked 2 guys and those guys came in and scored." I mean, that kind of broke it down. He faced 3 straight lefties. He's a lefty pitcher. When Riley Green came up, 4 straight balls. I mean, it just was, it looked bad.
Yeah.
It just looked bad.
Yeah.
And, we are hyper-focused on every little thing this early in a season. And that doesn't mean that Frazier Ellard is going to be this way for the rest of the season. But when you have a 4-game losing streak, and this was going to be a win, and you're going to be like, okay, we're 3-6, which isn't great, but they would have been tied with the Guardians and the Twins. And it's just kind of like, all right, they at least they salvaged a game. Let's move on. But a sweep, like, come on, that cannot happen.
Yeah, it's been tough, especially in that back end. And, I'm sure that there are plenty of White Sox fans looking down at the rest of the 40-man roster or even into Charlotte thinking, okay, how about a guy like Addison Coffey? Does he help you out in that bullpen? If Brandon Eisert's struggling against left-handers right now, then why are 3 lefties in that pen? I think those are all fair questions, but I think the overall answer to those things are, who are you pulling the parachute on, or who are you, kind of jettisoning from the plane, I guess, after a week and a half of baseball, right? There aren't a lot of teams who make moves like that because we are in such a small sample size sort of thing. It means the growing pains could be, a little bit longer than this. And it certainly means, some guys, the failure rate might be more indicative of where guys are at talent-wise. But I think this organization is kind of asked itself to be as optional as it can be in the bullpen with guys going in and out. But by getting Shane Smith and Mike Vasil, you've limited some of the ways that you can use those options and some of those arms you can shuffle in and out. And I think, given what we've seen, nobody's looking at Shane Smith and going, well, that was a bad move, right? And Mike Vasil, though he's only pitched, what, Chuck? I think
4 innings.
Yeah, 4 innings. You can definitely see the reason you got Mike Vasil too. So
4 scoreless innings, by the way.
Right. So if you're jazzed up about some of the moves, some of the roster that exists that back into the bullpen, remember those choices are made so as to have Smith and Vasil available to him as well.
All right, well, hold on. Do you have anything more? I have one other what I don't like. Do you have a what you don't like?
Yeah, I do. It's unfortunate that the offense right now has put together a lot of good at bats, but still needs to sequence so many good things in order. That I don't think that qualifies as like a thing I don't like, because we all knew it would kind of be the case with this. The coaching staff talks about this all the time with what is this offense is. But let's put that that's the subhead for me, I guess.
I'll say what I don't like. I got one more. Luis Robert Jr., he has no homers, 1 RBI. He's batting 161. He does have 4 walks, but he's 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. He did have a walk in every game against the Tigers, but he has 1 extra base hit this season. It was on opening day. And, I mean, he's got to be the dude.
Yeah.
He's batting second in this lineup. He's just got to be a dude, and he has not been a dude. It is the early part of April, but for any offense to click, if your best player is batting 161 out of the gate, you are not going to win too many games unless someone else is coming up big time elsewhere in the lineup, and we don't really have that happening right now.
No, I agree with you. I knew we'd get to Robert, obviously. I'm looking over at my baseball savant numbers here. Bat speed's at 76.2 miles an hour. That's in the 95th percentile. That's a very good thing. His barrel rate is in the 79th percentile. Not exactly where you want it, but certainly not at an empty thing. Everything else is blue, except for the walk rate. Blue is bad. You don't want to be blue.
No.
And his walk rate's at 11.1%, and that's like 3 points higher than his career best in his rookie season of 2020. Hawk talked for years, guys start taking their walks, start getting pitches to hit. Robert certainly has had some pitches to hit, especially in that Tigers series. There was the bases loaded situation where he rolled up a double play. The sum of, I won't say all, I'm not going to sugarcoat more than needs be, but some of the underlying numbers here do still support Robert being in the shape that he was in, or the swing being the shape he was in toward the end of spring training. At least we can take some solace in that.
Okay. We'll see what happens. I was going to, you know what? I'm going to bring this up. We brought this up on the post-game show on April 4th. This was the anniversary of the first game of the season in 2005.
Oh, wow.
And in that game, it was the 7th inning. There was no score. Everyone listening and watching is going like, Chuck, what are you doing here? Why are you bringing this up? What does this have to do with Luis Robert Jr.? I'm going to tell you what this has to do with him. Okay. No score. Playing the Indians at the time. Paul Konerko hits a double. Leadoff double in the 7th. 𝗻𝗓𝗓 is up next. Now, granted, it is in the 7th inning, all right? Because I'm going to circle back with Luis Robert Jr. about something he did not do in the 1st inning in the game against the Tigers. So, JD is thinking one thing. This is his first game ever with the White Sox. He's thinking one thing with Paul Konerko on second base. Do you want to guess what that one thing was?
Get him over.
Get him over.
Yeah.
Get him over. And he has this swing. He's just like, get this ball to right field, whatever I can do. He hits a fly ball to right.
Yep.
And it's caught. Konerko gets to third. Next batter is Rowan. He grounds a ball to Johnny Peralta at shortstop. There's an error. And 𝗻𝗓𝗓 dies. The White Sox win the game 1-0.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to go to what happened. So we did this on the anniversary of this, day. And then the game begins. Now, this is the 1st inning, but even still, Miguel Vargas leads off with a double.
There you go.
Luis Robert Jr. is next.
Yep.
And he put together just a crappy at-bat. And he strikes out. And it's just like this. If you're not feeling great at the plate, you'll know if you feel good or not. You don't like the matchup, whatever it is. There's a lot of things that go into it. At the very least, at least try to recognize that there's a man on second base with nobody out. You've just, you're trying to end a losing streak, and he does not put forth the effort to get him over. Now, this is just one at bat, but we've been watching Luis Robert Jr.'s entire career. I want that kind of recognition, and I don't see it enough from him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's completely fair. And I don't know that that's there in that player's particular swing. I don't know that that's there in that player's particular skill set, right? I mean, I think if it were, I think the offseason looks a lot different.
Yeah.
I think teams, maybe pay in terms of prospect premium what the White Sox were looking for if that's there, because what you're talking about there, Chuck, is a certain floor of player that teams are willing to make a leap for when they know where the floor is. Right. I think, though, when you look at this lineup, like, the idea was to have Mike Tauchman and Josh Rojas available to you from the get-go. And if you're talking about professional at-bats, you're talking about moving runners in a more, kind of, I guess, well-rounded is probably the best way to put it. That's where those at-bats were also going to come from.
Yeah.
And they don't have those, and they're injured, and they've had to make do with the guys that they've got. So, yeah, it's a fair point. It's absolutely a fair point.
Is it even food? If it isn't fried, Lawrence's, open 24 hours, east of Pilsen. Good fried fish isn't just for Good Friday. Lawrence's, the food you crave.
But let me say this. This is what I do like. And this was one example that happened in the game on Sunday. It's the top of the fourth inning. The White Sox are up 2-1. They score a run, and the only hit was an infield single by Matt 𝗪cie. It went infield single by 𝗪cie, Vargas walk, Baldwin bunted everybody over, and Amaya with a sac fly.
Yeah.
This is a team that unfortunately does not have a lot of power. They're going to have to find ways to score, and this is the bottom of the order, and that's how they scored a run that when it was 3-1 in the ninth, I'm going, boy, that one run is pretty big right now.
Right, and I think so. That's one of the things I really have liked. I think the at bats from guys like Vargas and Baldwin and Tauchman in the one game he's played looked like the grindy
𝗪cie.
type of 𝗪cie for sure. I'm going to get to 𝗪cie because
Yeah.
He might. I mean, Matty T might be my dude right now. I just gave him that nickname. I'm sure he's going to scream at me about it later. I don't think Matt would ever raise his voice, and he'd just be very, very disappointed, which is worse. You know, when your parent tells you, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, those are the worst.
You can do better, Connor.
Yeah. Oh, God, I'm going to hate it. But there are some fairly grindy at-bats, and there are some pretty good approaches. Like, Miguel Vargas looks really good right now at the plate. He looks very comfortable. Would you like to see a little bit more slugging percentage out of him? Yes, you absolutely would. But way better than where things were at the end of last season. And that's very promising. And I like the idea of not having him at the top of the lineup every day with the presence of Mike Tauchman, at least against the platoon advantage, and moving him down the lineup and letting you lengthen the whole thing just a little bit. That's been one thing I've really, really liked.
And then I also really like Martin Perez. 6 hitless innings. Yes, hitless innings in his first start, and certainly pitched good enough to get a win in his second start. He's given up 1 run in 12 1/3. He's a tone setter, a dude. I think this is what a signing this has been for the White Sox. And, I think, if this is where this is trending for him, well, 1, he'll be traded at the deadline.
Yeah.
But 2, he's going to give you a chance to win most nights, most days. And this is looking like a great pickup by the White Sox.
Yeah, I agree. Len Casper and I were talking a little bit about a Martin Perez at bat that he'd had in game 1 where he's able to go up and in with, I think it was a cutter, low and away with the sinker, down and in with, I think it was sinker again, and then up and away with a little change kind of thing. I mean, not like, top right quadrant or anything like that, but just up and out with a change. He uses any one of his pitches to any one of the 4 quadrants right now. He's really able to stretch that strike zone. And that's a huge thing. And I also think when you have a pitching staff with as much, there's not that many rookies technically in the pitching staff, but there's a lot of inexperience, right? Like Jonathan Cannon got his feet wet last year, sure, but that's 1 year, and 2024 was a tough one in a lot of different ways, right? Davis Martin is absolutely a veteran, but a less experienced veteran than you'd ever know, right?
Yeah, they don't have too many. There's I think the youngest pitcher is 25 on this roster.
Well, Martin's 28, but yeah, I mean, even still, that number you would think is, he should be 25 because he's had a year and a half of right. Pro ball or of MLB ball. I think with Perez. And this is what you saw out of Martin, too, in that rough start against the Tigers. He kept pitching to try and save that bullpen. And I think Perez is able to do that, too. There might be some games where he does give up 5 in 6, but gets you 6 and maybe even an out more, and that's really going to help this team, stay in it and keep their guys in good positions.
All right, let's move to the next category. Biggest overreaction to the White Sox start. I've seen this on Twitter. This team is worse than last year. I've seen they're going to lose 132 games on Twitter. If it's any consolation, they're really freaking out in Atlanta, where they're 1-8.
Sure.
The Guardians and Twins are 3-6, just 1 game worse, one game better than the White Sox. The White Sox have more runs than the Astros and the Braves. One less than the Mets and the Rangers. I guess my point is that, now granted, we are coming off the worst season in modern baseball history, and I get it. And there's a ton of carryover. And when you start a season like this, it's very easy to go to the place of, here we go again.
Yes.
But I guess all I can tell everyone is this. Connor and I have watched every single pitch. And I don't want to speak for you, Connor, but I think you see what I see, which is this is a better team. There are more ways for this team to win, but I will just throw this in. I am concerned about the bullpen.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. But you know how, for years we did this scouts and stats thing, right? Like, I can see it with my eyes. No, I've got it on a spreadsheet and it's this or it's that. And thank God we're all past that now and we don't have to do that. But there is something to the eye test, right? Your quote unquote eye test.
Yeah.
It's just very clear that this team is not last year's team. It's just not. It's offensively challenged. It's got some issues in the back end of the bullpen. I can point to a lot of different teams over the last 10, 15 years, all over baseball, that had issues in the back end of the bullpen and had an offensively tough, start to their year and looked record-wise a lot like this. It's not the same thing as last season. It's just not.
No, and you could say, well, and they had Garrett Crochet last year. How could this team be better? Well, yeah, Crochet was great in the first half, and basically almost all of their wins came with him and 𝗏𝗏 on the team at that time. And, what's this starting rotation going to look like compared to that one? I can't promise you I know that. I don't know. But
no, of course.
This is, again, early April. Go back 5 days, depending on when you're listening to this. The White Sox had not given up a single earned run in their rotation in the first 4.5 games of the season. So there's stuff there that I think can keep them in games. So I feel good about it from that respect. I'm not saying this team's going to be 500, but the overreaction that this is going to be the worst. This is going to be a worse team than last year. I totally think that is incorrect.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think if I can slide one more thing that I've kind of liked so far this season, it's the catching situation.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, there's been a mistake or two. Sure. Corey Lee had talked about that play out in front of home plate with the bases loaded and Vaughn's coming in and he's out in front of the plate and whatnot. That's sure. You're going to have issues pop up. I think by and large, I've been really impressed with Matt 𝗏𝗏 and the way he's been able to work game plans around. He and Corey work very hard together on those game plans with obviously 𝗵𝗏 and Ethan Katz and the starters and relievers and all that stuff, the pitching infrastructure as it comes around. But Matt's a really impressive dude in the clubhouse. I think I don't know that I knew that when he came over. I don't know that got talked about quite a bit when he was kind of acquired from the Cubs, right? Cubs.
He's got a little James McCann thing going there.
A little bit. Sure, it's a good comp. The guys trust him. He's shortened up his swing a little bit. He's covering the pitch up a bit more. I mean, I've really liked the catching position. It is much more solid than I thought. And you've still got Teal and Caro down there in AAA, who are clawing for at-bats as soon as they can.
Connor, guess what? This brings us to what or who is flying under the radar with the White Sox, brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. What am I talking about here? What's flying under the radar with the White Sox? If you haven't noticed, the catcher position, not just in the major leagues, but all the way down even to AA. Ladies and gentlemen, who is catching in AA right now? Omar Narvaez, veteran catcher, is catching the White Sox top pitching prospects with the Birmingham Barons. We're talking Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, and Grant Taylor. Who is their catcher going to be? A major leaguer, a guy who could have made the team out of spring training in Omar Narvaez. And yeah, the top two catching prospects, actually the top two of the top prospects overall for the White Sox are catchers, Edgar Quero and Kyle Teel. And they are having great starts to their season. Edgar Quero slashing .379, 500 on base, 517 slump. Teel had 2 homers and 8 RBIs in the first 2 games. And I haven't even mentioned on the major league team who have been the 2 most reliable hitters. the two catchers, Matt
Yeah.
Thaiss, a 409 on base percentage. Corey Lee, a 429 on base percentage. This is the best catching situation the White Sox have had maybe in their history. I don't recall having this kind of depth from the majors all the way down to Double-A. Really strong in the catcher position for now and the future.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. When you can look down the bench and you go, oh, I got A.J. 𝗵𝗀𝗀 catching 155 games for me, like that's probably a better catching situation than most. But it's really hard to find that guy who's going to catch 150, 155 games or whatever AJ was catching, when he was in his prime. I guess I could look it up, but I don't want to look away from the camera.
They lucked out. The White Sox lucked out because AJ ended up being, the most reliable catcher in terms of playing. He never went on the injured list.
No.
So it didn't matter if they had a catcher. They didn't need any catchers in AAA, Double-A, Low A.
No.
Because AJ, they needed a catcher just in case, but as you look back, AJ was just there all the time. You just needed to give him a backup. And if the backup got hurt, just give him another backup.
I was being exaggerating and hyperbolic. Yeah. Of course, catchers don't play 155. Like, I get that. But it's 130. It's 130 all the way through. It's wild. Nobody does that. That's so many games.
Very rare. There's like Salvador Perez.
Yeah.
And although he's had some injuries in the past, but there's not many guys.
Brian McCann before his knees completely gave away, which is because he was catching as much as he was.
A couple other under the radars. This is just a wonky April stat that will probably not last much longer, but while I can still say it, I'm going to. Brooks Baldwin has more RBIs than Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bobby Witt Jr., and Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
This is why you don't overreact to early April stats, early April records, because that doesn't make any sense either.
That's absolutely true, but I think the changes the health that Baldwin has right now and the changes he's made, kind of to his body and his approach. James Fegan of Sox Machine wrote a great article about, go figure, right? James wrote a great article about Brooks Baldwin and just kind of the work he'd done on the swing and the body and keeping him in his swing. It's a different player than we saw at the end of last season, and before that wrist injury especially. I would not be surprised at all if he's got a good year of utility work, depending on what the White Sox want to do with 𝗪cie𝗰𝗶𝗹, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point here soon.
Yeah, that's very close. Another under the radar thing you may not have seen. It's just one moment in a Low A 𝗏𝗏𝗏 season, but when you're coming off the season we just had and so much of the future is in the minor leagues, I'm hyper focused on the minor leagues. George Wolko and Braden Montgomery executed a double steal in 𝗏𝗏𝗏, and they both ended up scoring on a base hit. Like, I just love that actually happened somewhere. And I'm like, oh, this gives me, wow, this could be coming to the majors at one point, and George Wolko and Braden Montgomery can steal bases.
I was looking at Eric Longenhagen. He runs the Fangraphs prospect side of things, and he's a really good talent evaluator. I like Eric a lot. I'm sure you've had him on the show a time or two. He does not have Braden Montgomery in his latest top 100. And I don't freak out about it. Don't worry about it. Longenhagen is very much like what have you done for me lately kind of, and Braden hasn't played in the minor leagues up until 5 days ago. I will not be surprised at all when Braden Montgomery leaps up prospect lists this season. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. He homered from the right side of the plate. He's he's statistically better from the left side.
Yeah.
Got a double. I think he's now stolen a couple of bases. I'm not sure he's long for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I think this is a very let's give him a soft landing. And where does he end up? Double-A this year? Harold Reynolds, he was on the set with Harold Reynolds of MLB Network. And this is, a few months ago after the Crochet trade. And Harold's like, you're going to be in the majors this year.
Yeah.
That's a reach.
I don't think there's any reason to push that hard, especially with a guy who's just playing his first year of affiliated ball. There's no reason he can't be at Double-A. There's no reason he can't be in Birmingham by the end of the season. There just isn't.
Yeah. All right. Some early season hot takes, and we've kind of thrown a couple out there, but I don't know how hot they are. But here's one: 𝗪cie𝗰𝗶𝗹 will be here very soon. That's a hot take.
Could be Tuesday. I mean, honestly, it could be.
Could be Tuesday.
Could be. I mean, listen, you saw, what is it? The Rockies are calling up Zach Veen, right?
Mhm.
I mean, this is when the calendar starts to turn and when situations begin to change. The White Sox in that infield have some players that obviously have utility and that they like, but the ask for Mydroth was be a little bit more aggressive in the strike zone down to the minor leagues. He did not have a good spring in terms of his work at the plate. He has done everything you could ask for in the first week and a half of AAA ball. And the scouting report on this guy was ready for the big leagues now. You know, when you got him, I will not be surprised at all. Maybe not Tuesday. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. And Lord knows, with a 32-degree high in Cleveland, I could use a little bit of wishful thinking, if not long underwear, to get me through the night. But maybe by the time we get home, face Boston.
Yeah, I would not be shocked if Chase Mydroth was in the lineup on Tuesday. I mean, I'll just look at Sunday's game. 3 for 4 with 4 runs, 2 walks. In 7 games, he is slashing .333, 500, 750. He's not supposed to have all this power. He's got 3 home runs in AAA already.
Well, and that's the thing. This kid can walk. He understands the strike zone quite a bit. And I think, at no point in this first week and a half of AAA has he changed what scouts believe he can do, right? He's not a 20-homer guy, and he's, not going to have, ungodly walk rates. But he's a guy who can handle the strike zone. Apparently can handle shortstop a lot better than I figured he could when we got to spring training. I was really impressed with the range. I'm not saying he's, 𝗕𝗏cie Smith or anything like that, but he's certainly a better shortstop than I think a lot of people gave him credit for. And these are the spots very clearly the White Sox need help offensively.
7 walks, 4 strikeouts. Here is what sportscaster Chuck Garfien would do. Okay. And by the way, 𝗏𝗂 𝗏𝗏 is 2 for 20 at the plate. He's not doing much. He's solid at shortstop, but Chase Mydroth would be, in my opinion, a better option right now. Just the way that things are shaking out with both of these guys. Here's what I would do, and this is what I noticed. And I did not have a single conversation with Chase Mydroth about this. I'm just going off of what the eye test showed me. Once they put Mydroth consistently in the 1 hole in spring training, and when they decided that Colson Montgomery was not going to be the shortstop, that's when his numbers went downhill. If it was me, you call him up and you have him bat 9th.
Sure.
9th. And then, look how with that plate discipline, how that then turns around with Tauchman at the top of the order. I'm liking that. Why are we rushing to put Chase Mydroth? Yeah, you want him in the leadoff or 2-hole just, at some point, but it's April. Put him in the 9 hole.
Yeah, I mean, Will's been really clear that he doesn't give too much of a hoop. There we go. He didn't care too much. Almost said a few other things about what the lineup construction really is. He's looking to create pockets. That's like the new thing, right? Like he's looking to create pockets that disrupt and make another manager think twice about how that bullpen is going to get used when it gets to games that matter late. And regardless of where you put those guys, I think having some of that talent that's ready to go in those lineups is, that's top of mind, at least for me. And it seems Chase is pretty ready.
Any hot take for you want to add?
I guess for me, the hot take is more centered around some of the big league stuff that I've watched. And it'll be, I'm fascinated to see Shane Smith's start on Tuesday. If we do have a ball game on Tuesday, here's hoping. Just really, really, really fascinated because what that approach is going to look like against that changeup is be really interesting to watch. Because we saw with the Tigers' approach to Davis Martin's changeup, obviously they're not the same pitches, but they function the same in those guys' arsenals. What it was, how it disrupted him, and that Davis wasn't able to execute, kind of the secondary attack plan that he'd put together. I would imagine that he can. It's not like it's a thing he's unable to do. My hot take would be that this kick change or whatever that however you want to call the secondary pitch for both Martin and Smith, they're going to keep using it. And I'm not worried about the fact that a team changed their approach and got them off their game plan. That's going to happen every now and again. And I'm I guess, buying in or doubling down on, or selling whatever stock or buying whatever stock you're selling on those guys, because I think it's in there and I think that's going to work for them.
All right. I had one hot take that. Oh, first off, how about Shane Smith? So he's from Massachusetts, thank God. His first start, it was freezing in Chicago, and now he's going to get 25-degree wind chill in Cleveland.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's not going to be great on Tuesday night at the opener. For the Cleveland Guardians, it is, and I feel bad for Shane, but I don't think he cares. I think the adrenaline, I think the warmth of being a major leaguer probably keeps him solid through 4 innings.
He'll be the warmest player on the field for the White Sox,
no doubt about it. But it's the other thing about Shane, on a serious baseball, it petered out a little bit toward the end, right? We saw the velo dip. We saw what that was, and that's something that the White Sox, kind of signed up for when you threw that guy into the rotation. This is the first time for them, and that's why this is such a volatile thing, especially when it gets to the middle of that bullpen.
Yeah, I went hot take when I said that this team is going to be better than last year, and I still argue much better than last year. The offense is much better. It's still not a great offense. It's below average, but okay, they've scored 32 runs in the first 9 games. Do you want to guess how many runs they scored in the first 10 last year, Connor?
Is it possible to score negative runs? Because it felt like they were negative 10.
It was 10. They scored 10 runs in 16 games. They have 32 through 9. Now, 2 of the games they scored 17. They had, I think, a 9 and an 8.
Sure.
But that team got shut out a lot last year. It was just there's just more ways to win games with this offense, and I'm bullish on it. Not to be one of the best offenses, or even to be in the middle of the road. Just finish 22nd. They were 100 runs worse than the next worst team in baseball last year. If they could finish 22nd in runs, that is a massive improvement within 1 year in an offseason where they didn't go out and sign a massive big bat in the middle of the order. They're just, patching things up for the time being.
Yeah, and I think the same or a similar thing can be said about the defense. And I know that it's less sexy and not so fun, and it is absolutely fair for White Sox fans or fans of whatever team to say, yeah, but we expect good defense. It's defense, right? You should be, but they haven't for some time, and it is much better now. And I'm not asking in the same way you are, for a top 5 defense, right? Or your Colorado Rockies infield from what was it last year that was so good. I'm asking for middle of the road, play major league defense, throw the ball over to first. That helps when you're walking guys. It's not going to fix the walking of the guys, but it helps when you're walking as many guys as the White Sox bullpen has so far.
All right, one more thing. It's not really under the radar unless you didn't notice it. It was a Saturday night. You might have been out. This sportscaster was not out. I had no life over the weekend. So what did I do on my Saturday night? I was at home watching Hagen Smith make his Double-A debut. And so he's going up against the Cubs Double-A team. They're now called the Knoxville Smokies, by the way. I didn't know that until it used to be the Tennessee Smokies. Now the Knoxville Smokies. And he, first inning, hit by pitch, 2 walks, wild pitch, run scores. And I'm like, come on. Really? This is how Hagen Smith's going to start? Well, second inning, a couple of walks, 2 strikeouts to get out of it. But then Hagen Smith found his mojo, got his mojo back. He ends up going 4 innings, does not give up a single hit in his outing, 4 walks, gives up the 1 run, 10 strikeouts, and he struck out the last 6 guys that he faced. He throws heat. He's got a slider. There was so much swing and miss by the Cubs Double-A team. It looked effortless. That gave me a whole lot of promise for this season for Hagen Smith.
I agree. There's something to be said for when it looks as advertised, even if the advertisement had, some fine print on the bottom that you're going to have to work through and terms that you're going to have to accept or whatever. The command is a thing, right? And that's coming along for Hagen, and it probably took a little bit of a step back in spring. but he's better than you are when it comes to, AA ball players, right? Like, he can look down that 60 feet, 6 inches at that other AA hitter and go, I have a slider that you can't touch, and here it comes, and you're going to swing over the top of it again, right? Like, it's just that kind of good. And that's where, it's going to be really interesting to watch how the White Sox approach both him and Schultz, because you could see some really gaudy numbers from both of them at chunks during the season. And yet the developmental marks for them aren't so much striking out everybody that steps in. It's get back up and do it again 5 days later. It's okay, and on that 5th day, get me into the 6th, when the season is ready for them, when their training regimens are allowing them to do that. And those are lessons that I think they'd rather them learn at AA right now than, make it. And who knows, maybe we see him in the back. They did the Jairo plan last year. He threw out of the bullpen just a little bit, did Jairo, and that was kind of interesting to watch. Maybe that's in the future for them. I kind of hope, because it'd be fun.
Where this bullpen is trending 1 week, 2 weeks into the season, they're going to need their arms in the bullpen.
It won't be. Yeah, no, you're right. But it won't be because they need help. It won't be because they need help at the major league level.
They'll be ready for that.
They'll be ready. Yeah, it'll be because they're ready.
Yeah, and what I like about this was, like, they're going to come to the majors and they're going to struggle. They need something to fall back on mentally, physically, and be like, oh, I've been in this position before. Like Hagen Smith will be like, oh, I remember I had that start against Tennessee in April where I could not find home plate for an inning.
Right.
Oh, I know, and look what I did. Now, granted, that was a AA team. This is the majors, but they're still professional hitters, and he'll be a better pitcher for it. So this was a great, learning experience for him, I think. And so we'll anxiously await his next start, as well as Noah Schultz, who wasn't great in his first start, but let's, see how it all progresses. Connor McKnight, great stuff. Really enjoying your, are you calling yourself a sideline reporter when you do it, or you're a field reporter?
I'm pitching field reporter. It feels more appropriate to the game.
I know. I need to start calling it a field reporter. You are a field reporter, not a sideline reporter, because it's not.
I don't know where the sidelines are in baseball. I couldn't point to a sideline.
But are you on the field? Well, sometimes you are on the field.
I mean, we do the open, we do the pre and post game hits on the field. Sometimes we do. I think we did them in the dugout. We did them in the dugout that last day in Detroit because there was a kids parade going around the track.
I'll get used to that.
As fun as it would be to just have all these little ones, walk in front of the camera and pretend like they're not there, Chris Withers was like, no, get in the dugout and give me a good shot.
Right, so this is going to happen to you a lot at home, especially when it gets warmer out, because I had to dodge and weave myself through this all the time, that when you do your hits for our pregame show, depending on when we do it, if it's a live shot, there will be parades.
So here's the other thing I'm worried about. Let me peel back the curtain just a moment.
Yeah.
I will not name the player, an unnamed White Sox player told me that because I was shooting in the dugout.
Yeah.
Had I stayed in the dugout any longer, I was going to get gum just whipped in the direction, toward me, at and face, the whole thing. I got out of there in this kind of moment because he was just about to throw handfuls of double chew, right at my face. So I'm glad I got out of there in time.
Was it Davis Martin?
No,
it was not Davis Martin. Okay.
No.
Seemed like
it was a guy you don't want throwing stuff at you. Tell you that much.
You don't want stuff thrown at you. Who would that be? On this team, Mike Tauchman.
Mike, I think, was working in the tunnel at the time, so not Mike Tauchman.
Mike's no nonsense. So
no, he's not. But I'm talking about a guy with an absolute laser for an arm. And
okay. Oh, so in that way, a pitcher.
Yeah.
A pitcher.
Just a really good arm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a really good arm. Just a cannon.
Just a Jonathan Cannon of an arm. Oh, did I just say
that? Whoever it was.
Okay. Connor McKnight, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And stay warm in Cleveland. And let's win a freaking series against an AL Central team.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm absolutely in.
I am in too. That's a wrap for the White Sox Podcast with me, Chuck Garfien. Hawk Harrelson, take it away.
All right, Chuck. This edition of the White Sox Podcast is over.